So your hero party defeated the Demon King. Hurrah! Now what? Well, you go back to the royal capital to flex on the crowd, that's what. Imagine defeating the Demon King, saving the world, rolling credits, and then realizing you have no idea who your party members actually are. Frieren Beyond Journey's End is what happens when the real story starts happening after the happy ending. And today, we're recapping how this 100-year-old elf mage goes on a slow emotional road trip to grow some feelings and learn how to give a damn. So after a solid decade of adventuring together, this hero party composed of a narcissist virgin hero, Himmel, a drunkard priest hater, buff Tyrion Lannister, Eisen, and emotionless elf lolly Frieren returns from defeating Starscourge Radon and saving the world. And of course, after a production number of No One Mourns the Wicked... Oh, wait. Sorry, wrong show. After defeating the Demon King, the people welcome the heroes with big arms. Big celebrations, fireworks, all-you-can-eat buffet, the works. The gang reminisces about the 10 years, and they're all watching the Era meteor shower. This once-in-a-lifetime spectacle that happens every 50 years. Frieren is like, yeah, I'll probably be back here in half a decade to watch this again. Hopefully on a nicer hill with a better view. Then, as goat crap does, the gang decides to split up. Frieren's off to pursue more magic because she's in her spell hoarder era. Meanwhile, everyone else just lives their lives and grows old. So Frieren sets out on an adventure, looking forever 17. Vampire, right? Well, everyone else gets old and gray. Seriously, why do elves get all the good genes? Fast forward 50 years. Frieren decides it's time to go back to the royal capital, but not because she misses her broskies, but to actually retrieve a quest item from Himmel the Virgin, who, to no one's surprise, is now an old dude. She reunites with Himmel, looking like a 4'5" grandpa, and Hater, whose liver is now trying to get back at him for his alcohol abuse. And Eisen, who, yeah, is still kinda tough, but age is technically hitting him too. They go back to that same spot and watch the meteors, and Frieren's like, see? Told you it was worth the wait. Then bam! Himmel goes, I'm die, thank you forever. Well, at least he ripped peacefully? So anyway, Himmel's gone. The hero party mourns. Well, not exactly. But Frieren totally breaks down at one point. Girl realizes she never truly understood Himmel and has a full-blown emotional crisis. Like, she knew he was gonna die eventually. He's human. She's not. But she regrets not connecting with him more. So Frieren makes a vow to understand humans better. Next adventure? No regrets.
No regrets.
Another 20-year time jump, this time after Himmel's death. Frieren visits Hyder in his middle-of-nowhere cabin, bro's on his last legs, and he's like, hey, Frieren, can you take on this apprentice of mine? Her name's Fern, and she's going to be an amazing mage one day, probably. But Frieren's like, nah, I'm not babysitting someone who's gonna die on me in like 5 minutes. But after getting scammed by Hyder with a grimoire about immortality, Frieren ends up training Fern anyway. Cue training montage. Over the next few years, Fern's getting mad good at magic. It was at this point too that Frieren realized Hader debated her into staying, because apparently there is no immortality spell in the grimoire. The real purpose of the task was to force Frieren to train Fern into the girl boss that she is. And now that he can leave Fern safely in Frieren's hands, Hader's life subscription finally expired. His final request though was for Frieren to keep Fern safe, and Frieren, wanting to humor an old friend for the last time, said, I'd bet. And so Frieren continues training Fern for a couple more years, getting her into shape to not freak out and die when she meets a goblin, or a flying cockroach. But wait a minute, if Frieren's already finished campaign mode, what's happening on New Game Plus? Well, unlike the heroics they used to do in the past, Frieren has a different kind of adventure now, doing side quests across the land and getting paid in grimoires and random ass spells. Basically, Frieren has been taking odd jobs here and there for less than minimum wage. Feels familiar for some reason. Anyway, Frieren and Fern are hired by some random old lady to clean a statue of little old Himmel. So Frieren got out her magic pressure water, trademarked, and made the statue as shiny as Cristiano Ronaldo's crotch. But the lady, like most Karens, decided that that was not enough. Of course, the statue needed a field of flowers, and Frieren's like, oh, well, let's put Himmel's hometown flowers then. The blue moon weed. Problem was, the blue moon weed was thought to have gone extinct. Probably because Snoop Dogg smoked it all. I don't know. Still, Frieren's like, challenge accepted, and the next thing you know, they're on a scavenger hunt for more rare magical flower. They literally spend half a year searching for this flower. And just when Frieren's about to give up, Frieren gets an idea from the seed-thieving rats in the forest. So they go on this whole rat-chasing adventure, which leads them to an abandoned tower. Frieren goes full-on defying gravity and flies to the top of the tower, where they find a beautiful carpet of blue moon weed plants, all thanks to the rats. The little guys were actually doing their part for the ecosystem. Go rats! Frieren studies the flower with the help of magic, makes a flower bed around the statue, and places a crown of blue moon weed on Himmel's head, and takes a moment to remember how he wanted to show her the beauty of these flowers back when they were fighting the Demon King together. Moving on from that flower nonsense, here's a rundown of the other shenanigans Frieren was up to. She and Fern finally got rid of Qual, a powerful demon that Frieren sealed away 80 years ago. Qual was the inventor of the spell Zoltrak, which is basically the demon version of Avada Kedavra. But ever since he was sealed away, humanity was able to advance their magic, turning Zoltrak, the spell that killed a lot of people in the past, into a demon-killing spell, and Frieren gave Qual a taste of his own medicine. Then they arrived in the Grand Central, where an elderly man requested their help to dredge out shipwrecks from the shore. After 3 months of cleanup and an entire winter, all she got for it was a fake copy of the grimoire of her mentor Flamme. But hey, at least the sunrise view is good. Then came the entire adventure in the Bread region, where Frieren reunites with your boy Eisen for the first time in 30 years. This time they find legit notes from Flamme, talking about her conversations with the dead. It was revealed that 1. Flamme did intend for Frieren to find the notes as an I told you so, and 2. That Frieren needs to retrace her steps to end the location of the Demon King's castle if she wants to find Ariol, the land where souls rest. And then they end up in the Wild region, where they encounter an Einzim, a phantom demon that uses illusions of loved ones to lure humans in. The mofo tried to trick Fern with an illusion of Hater, and Frieren with an illusion of Himmel, which didn't work all that well, because both of our heroines are girl boss Yas queens. Frieren and Fern continue on their aimless frolicking until they arrive in Regal Canyon, where they meet Stark. No, not Tony Stark or Ned Stark. This guy. The hero who accidentally saved a village by aura farming in front of a giant dragon. And it was not just any ordinary dragon, it was a solar dragon too. These guys were like Elden Ring boss material. Ain't nobody want to mess with that shit. Well, except for Fern. Spoilers, it didn't go well. Stark, who was actually Eisen's apprentice, swoops in to save the day. Only problem, the boy is a total coward. Bro hasn't really fought anything except his own fear, but Frieren, ever the 4D chess master, gives him a pep talk that basically makes it clear that if he wants to be a warrior, he better suck it up and fight the huge dragon that just flamed them out of the canyon. Well, essentially, Frieren had an idea about how strong Stark actually was, based on what Eisen told her. She just had to trick him into realizing it. In the end, Stark solos the dragon, a la Sung Him Woo, and takes it down with the power of God and anime. Stark marvels at how powerful he is, while Frieren went, "Good job, kid, welcome to the Gang." And just like that, Stark joins the squad. After getting mistaken for nobodies in the fortress city of Wall, the trio managed to exit the city and continue their journey after the Castellan of the city recognized Frieren's celebrity status. Episode 7. From there, they clean up a landslide in the end road, while Frieren comments on how the lack of romance and reproductive instincts of elves resulted in their numbers dwindling. Because apparently, when God distributed horniness in the world, the elves were absent. Meanwhile, the humans. And then they drop by another town, just in time for the Liberation Festival, an annual celebration of the Hero Party. And even though Frieren felt some type of way about it in the beginning, she eventually understands the impact of the thing that they did all those years ago, and why people were still celebrating their dubs against the Demon King to this day. But if you thought the shenanigans stopped there, then you're in for a ride, my friend. Enter Aura, the guillotine. So we roll up to Graf Granite's domain. Fairly peaceful, average town, when all of a sudden Frieren's spider senses start tingling. Then she spots them. Demons. She tries to delete them on sight, but the guards pin her down like a wanted criminal. Graf, the town's leader, flags them, saying the demons are messengers of peace. One of them introduces himself as Lord Lugner. He smiles like a guy who says, "Trust me, bro," with no sources. Frieren looks at him the way you would look at a cockroach and calls demons what they are in this world: wild beasts that copy human voices. In return, the town shows Frieren their warm hospitality by tossing her in the dungeon. To help her friend, Fern and Stark do some recon and learn the big name behind this peace talk: Aura the Guillotine, one of the 7 sages of destruction, ex-general for the Demon King, and an anime-ified demon version of Blossom from the Powerpuff Girls. She has been grinding power for nearly 3 decades, while the town has been stuck in a forever war. Supposedly, she is tired and wants a truce. Right, because a demon who's lived 500 years with an army of undead grows tired. In any case, Frieren tells the kids what demons actually do with words. They do not communicate, they bait. This is where we cut to a memory she had during her hero party days. The old party once spared a childlike demon who cried mother. It played house with a villager for a while, then burned his home and killed him, planning to replace the girl it had eaten with the chief's daughter. Himmel hesitated, so Frieren ended it. The demon, before turning into dust, admitted that, to it, mother was something like a magic word that kept it alive. Lesson learned: never again. Back in the present, Lugner sniffs that Frieren is the only one who sees through the act. Graf Granite invites the envoy deeper in his mansion, shows them his late son's sword, and then snaps. Apparently, he only let them in to avenge his son who died to Aura. Lugner cools the room with fake empathy, saying he kept his own father's room clean after humans killed him. Granite relents for the moment and considers negotiations. But as they leave, the demon girl Linny asks what a father is. Lugner replies with, "Who knows? Red Flag City." Then the reveal. Lugner's real plan is simple: trick Granite into dropping the barrier around the town. Then Aura's army walks in and Thanos snaps everything. Meanwhile, his other underling, Draught, has gone to remove a nuisance. Translation: he is headed to the dungeon to kill Frieren. Draught gets in by casually decapitating a guard with wire magic and swaggers into Frieren's cell. He calls himself one of Aura's executioners and hangs her by the neck with his magical garrote, feeling like Kearuga. Frieren, on the other hand, was actually bored of this exchange. Concentrating her mana on her neck, she slices off his arm, then the other, and does a Mortal Kombat fatality on him. After Draught dissolves like Peter Parker in Infinity War, she walks out and sees the dead guard. Great. Now it looks like she did it. Meanwhile, Fern and Stark are debating on what to do over lunch. They decide to appeal to Graf Granite to free Frieren and then help fight, because Lugner radiates boss energy that 2 people should not solo. In the mansion, Granite confronts the envoy about their missing 3rd demon. Lugner tries to say he went to the restroom, but Granite does not buy it. Lugner drops the mask and beheads the surrounding sentinels with blood magic. He wounds Granite, keeps him alive, and demands he lift the barrier. Fern spots Frieren outside in a black cloak. Frieren explains she killed Dront, which makes her look like the killer of the guard since demons turn to mana dust. She is ready to leave town to avoid an execution. Fern pushes back. If she runs, the demons will raise the place. But Frieren throws it back to her and asks if they only fight when the enemy is weak. The silence says it all. She tells them they are not weaker than these demons. Then she senses a huge mana presence far from town, and upon realizing its auras, Frieren decides to activate Exterminatus mode. As Frieren confronts demonized Blossom, Stark sneaks in and finds Granat tied to a chair with magic rope. Then Garf tells him to forget the rescue and evacuate the townsfolk. Stark obviously refuses, but then the demons return. A fight ensues, but Fern manages to launch a surprise attack and turns Lugner into the donut version of Portus D. Ace. Stark and Fern manage to escape with Graf, and they bring him to a priest to heal. After debating what to do, the children decide to find a way to reach Frieren and ask her to fight the demons for them. Too late though. Lugner manages to track them down after putting a bit of his blood on them during their first confrontation. Round 2. Fight! As Fern duels Lugner and his blood magic, Stark fights Liney. Her moves look exactly like his master Eisen, literally copying his techniques. Stark eats hit after hit, but keeps on standing back up, because anime. Eventually, he realizes Liney's attacks are basically a watered-down version of Eisen's, and Stark wins his duel with a 5th level Divine Smite that will make any D&D paladin proud. Lugner prepares to crush Fern with full strength, and then sees Liney crumble into mana dust in the corner of his eye. Stark's timing gives Fern the opening she wants, and she nails Lugner in the stomach again. This time though, she finishes the job. Meanwhile, outside the town, Frieren finally aura forms. Pun very much intended. We get treated to a flashback where we see Flamme take Frieren as an apprentice, training her in the mystic arts of Deletus Demonicus, and leaving her with a philosophy and a toolkit. Now we jump back to the battlefield where Frieren faces Aura. The Demon King's ex-general uses the Scales of Obedience to weigh Frieren's mana, thinking she's already won. To recap, the scales weigh mana and force the weaker person to submit to the will of the stronger one. Aura thought, nah, I'd win, because she's accumulated mana for 500 years. What she didn't know was, Frieren has been alive for more than double that time, and has just been keeping her mana under wraps. Frieren lifts the seal on herself and tips the scales so hard, Aura is gagged. Frieren tells Aura to commit Sudoku, and Aura obeys. Frieren won, Aura headless. After the fight, Graf Granite thanked her for limiting casualties. He looks at the fallen and thinks of his son. He orders proper burials. Frieren congratulates Fern and Stark for beating Lugner and Liney, earning 2 more dubs for Team Frieren. After receiving a grimoire as payment, they leave the city behind with a graveyard full of people paying their last respects. Out on the road, they hear the next requirement. The Magic Association exam is a thing they now need to pass in order to continue the journey. They turn toward it, try to be responsible adults for 2 minutes, promptly get lost in the snow. While the squad is trekking through the deck region during a blizzard, Stark faceplants. The wind is bullying everyone, so they hunt for shelter. Frieren remembers a cabin from 80 years ago. They open the door and find an elf doing squats? A monk apparently treating the cabin like Planet Fitness. Fern declares him a pervert and tries to bail. But the elf recognizes Frieren as one of his kind, so he lets them in. Inside, we meet Kraft, the first time he has seen another elf in 300 years. He lost his charcoal in the storm, so yes, the squats were his space heater. Stark wakes up spooned by a very warm monk, panics, calls Kraft an old man, then immediately compliments his physique. Fern hears nice body and misreads the room.
Why are you gay?
Stark clarifies he means the guy is built. Not that he wants to elope. They do supply runs to craft snowed-in carts, find tons of frozen food, and accept the cabin life. Frieren and Kraft realize they do not know each other at all, which is very elf, pretty on brand. Half a year passes. They wait out the winter, cook, talk, and grind survival XP. Kraft is devoted to the goddess of creation. He believes in heaven. Frieren asks, why? Since the goddess rarely shows up outside myths. Kraft says he used to doubt too, but now he needs someone to honor him, because everyone who witnessed his deeds is gone. Kraft says something along the lines of, it hurts to leave tracks no one remembers, which is a blow and a half away to my own existential crisis. Thanks, show. In any case, Kraft and Frieren continue to have this conversation about heaven, death, and honoring people. In the end, Frieren declines Kraft's offer to honor her story, saying she already had someone to honor her, thinking of Himmel. Kraft says he might meet him one day. They exchange a quiet nod, then part ways when the sky finally clears. The trio continue traveling through the Schwer Mountains again, and this time it's Frieren who's underestimated the cold. Fern is literally carrying her like a princess. Stark offers to help, and Fern calls him a pervert for it. Eventually, the blizzard breaks, and they roll into the village of Swords. They get greeted by the new village chief, a little child, which says a lot about the child labor laws in Frieren's world. The chief notes that Frieren came late, monologuing an angry message that the previous village elder wanted to pass on to Frieren, like a howler from Harry Potter. It seems we've got a bit of overlap between franchises. Apparently, Frieren promised to return in 50 years, but she swears she said 80. Whatever. She's here now anyway. We learn that the village is being terrorized by someone called the Ruler of the Mountains because they guarded the hero's blade, a sacred sword at a nearby holy ground. Legends say only the one who drives out calamities can pull it. No one could until 80 years ago, when Himmel the hero did it. The next day, Frieren and the gang start mopping up demons like they're spring cleaning a suburban home. Fern asks why they have not issued a subjugation request since the situation is bad. The chief says Himmel was the hero, which honestly does not explain anything at all. More demons crowd the mouth of the cave. Stark charges, Cleaves then gets yeeted by the ruler of the mountains. After making sure Stark is alright, Frieren and Fern delete the ruler together. Stark asks, what is inside the cave, which reveals a hidden truth. The hero's blade, the real one, has been there the whole time, and it was drawing demons in like haters to a streamer apology video. They cannot destroy it because the barrier is still holding, albeit a little cracked. Stark is shocked upon learning that Himmel could not actually pull the blade. In a flashback, Hader tries to console him, but Himmel just smiles, saying it's fine to be a fake hero. Himmel promises he will still defeat the Demon King. Real or fake doesn't matter if you actually save people. Back in the cave, Frieren says Himmel proved it true. He saved the world without the blade, which still makes him the real G. Fern asks why this stayed a secret, and Frieren says that people wanted a story. Ugly details get sanded down. The hero becomes an icon, and the truth gets buried under the legend. Extermination concluded, the chief thanks them and reminds Frieren not to be late next time. They head out and celebrate Stark's 18th birthday in the next tower over. Stark spends a quiet moment with Fern, talking about their childhood and personal stories. The party continues heading north, where they reach the Altwoods. Frieren meets a man stuck waist deep in a bottomless swamp. While sinking, he confesses his regrets about abandoning his childhood dream of adventuring and turning down the friend who once invited him to chase that dream together. Frieren refuses to pull him out because his hand is muddy, and she takes so long trying to remember the right rescue spell that Fern eventually arrives and helps her free him. The group escorts the man until the boundaries of his village, then leaves, but they end up going back for help when Stark Baka immediately gets bitten by a venomous snake, despite being warned moments earlier. Unable to diagnose the poison herself, Frieren rushes him back to the village church, where the local priest's younger brother, Sane, and the man they almost didn't save from quicksand earlier, casually cures Stark with advanced detoxifying magic. The priest privately asks Frieren to take Sane with them so he can finally pursue the adventure he once dreamed of. Frieren tries repeatedly to recruit Sane, but the priest-turned-gambler insists it is too late to chase childish dreams and refuses every attempt, including Stark gambling for him. Fern returning their stolen belongings and Frieren attempting questionable seduction spells she once used to make Himmel faint. Through these interactions, Sane's buried regrets resurface. Frieren eventually tells him the same thing Himmel once told her. The past doesn't matter. What matters is the present. This pushes Sane to confront the real reason he stayed behind: guilt. Believing his older brother sacrificed his own future for him. After a heated exchange where his brother insists he has no regrets, Sane finally chooses to move on. He apologizes, embraces the dream he abandoned, and joins Frieren's party, promising to travel with them until he finds the childhood friend he once rejected. With Sane in tow, the party gets into more shenanigans. Like when Sane becomes a couples therapist for Stark and Fern, when my mans forgot it was her birthday. He makes up for it though by gifting her a bracelet with a flower design that basically meant, "I love you, please marry me." Our resident tsundere didn't reject it though, so profit? Or that time when they survived their entire wagon being dropped from the sky by a massive bird, only for Frieren to lose the only remaining keepsake from Himmel that she had. She found it again though, don't worry. They even defeated a chaos flower that cursed an entire village to sleep. Sane gets bonus points for that one, as he basically saves the entire village by trusting Frieren's plan. Also, we find out that our boy likes cougars and MILFs, but doesn't consider 1,000-year-old Frieren as one. And don't forget that time when Stark became a noble's stand-in for his dead son. Bro got that James Dean daydream look in his eyes with that long hair, slick back white t-shirt, and made the ladies flood the basement. Fern especially. Frieren also brought Stark to Old Man Vol for training, while taking the time to reminisce about the good old days. After that visit, the party continues to look for Sane's childhood friend, who, by the way, is named Warrior Gorilla. Gotta hand it to him. It's catchy alright. Rolls right off the tongue. The party gets snowed in by a blizzard once more, but luckily they're in a village, so they manage to wait it out comfortably. Fern and Stark get into another not-lovers quarrel, but Sane quickly fixes it with his love guru advice. But once he gets away from the kids though, bruh explodes in frustration and embodies the entire fandom's sentiment. Just get together already! After the storm passes, Sane parts with the party, ultimately making the decision to keep looking for his best friend. The party continues to outburst as he heads to Tur. Fern along the way gets sick, and Frieren and Stark go on another fetch quest to find medicine for the lady. Mushrooms that grow on the roots of the icicle cherry blossom tree. Fern takes the meds, recovers, and the party continues north, unaware of the horrors about to unfold during the Magic Association exam. So what happens during the Magic Association exams? Well, there's bird catching, the Clone Wars, a judgmental elf, and a whole lot of chaos. Nearly 3 decades after the death of Hero Himmel, Frieren and the gang travel to the frozen cold region, heading toward Oberst, the greatest magical city in the northern lands. Fern notes that only certified first-class mages can enter the northern plateau, but Frieren dismisses the title as a temporary human invention, and insists Fern take the exam instead. Fern doubts herself, while Stark wonders why only powerful mages can enter the plateau. Frieren explains that the region is home to intelligent monsters, like the Einzum that use magic, and cunning tactics, which means they need Gandalf and John Constantine just to cross north. As they near the city, the group catches a wagon ride. Frieren mentions they'll plan their strategy for the exam once they arrive, but Frieren teases her about being as powerful as an old mage, which makes Frieren sulk. Stark tries to defend her, but ends up reminding her that he once called her an old hag. Frieren retaliates by pretending to nap on Fern's lap, though she complains that Fern's bazingas block half the sky. Humor aside, Frieren reminds Fern that strength isn't determined by mana. Talent, technique, and resolve matter too. She reveals she has lost 11 duels to mages with less mana than her, 6 humans, 4 demons, and 1 elf. Meanwhile, elsewhere in the northern lands, Kraft the monk rescues a young woman from bandits. She introduces herself as Ubel, a mage also on her way to Oberst for the first class mage exam. One look at her eyes and Kraft realizes this biz is a psycho. Noting nearby corpses she clearly dispatched, Ubel shrugs off his moralism, calling him a boring old man. In Oberst, Frieren and Fern visit the Continental Magic Association to register. The receptionist explains that the exam is held once every 3 years, lasts 2 months, and is limited to mages certified 5th class or higher. Since Frieren never bothered with paperwork, she's technically uncertified and tries to bow out, insisting again that Fern take it alone. Fern worries about failing, but Frieren remains disinterested, until an old man notices Frieren's holy emblem and recognizes it. Surprise, her emblem, a relic of the ancient magic guilds, grants her the express lane to the registration queue. To prepare, Frieren and Fern study the association's structure. About 2,000 mages exist, with only 600 ranked 5th class or above, and just 45 are 1st class. Some exam years have no passers, only corpses. To avoid being dungeon fertilizer, Frieren and Fern spent 2 months of study and practice until the day of the exam arrived. The proctor, 1st class mage Ganao, warns that the test is deadly and no help will come to those who fall. Yeah, bruh, we heard. I think the corpses were a dead giveaway. Among the 57 participants are elite and infamous names. Werble, captain of the Northern Magic Corps, the ruthless old strategist Denkin, the talented Fern, and Ubel, the killer who once murdered her proctor in a previous exam. Ganao divides everyone into teams of 3 via enchanted bracelets. Frieren is grouped with 2 bickering 3rd class mages, Kane and Lawine, whose first encounter involves one sitting on the other's head. Fern's team includes Ubel and a composed man named Land. Yes, that's his name. No, I don't know why. Ask his parents. Ganao then explains the first test. Each team must capture a magical bird called a still by sunset the next day. All 3 members must survive, and leaving the area is forbidden. Frieren's group immediately descends into chaos. Khan and Lawine argue non-stop, but prove surprisingly talented when they combine water and ice magic to momentarily trap a still. It breaks free, however, revealing its true nature, tougher than dragons and faster than your dad leaving to buy milk. Later, during that night, Kana is ambushed by a monstrous bird. Frieren saves her and gently questions why she called for Lawine, someone she claims to hate. Through flashbacks, Kane admits Lawine once kicked her off a cliff to force her to learn flight magic, which worked, thankfully. Their rivalry hides mutual respect. Inspired, Frieren begins to craft a plan. The next morning, she reveals that she has an ancient hunter's spell that can bind bird-like creatures, but only within half meter. The challenge then is getting that close. Kane theorizes that if she could saturate rainwater with mana, she could manipulate it to trap the still, though doing so would alert the other teams. Frieren decides they'll use the idea, because fuck the other players, that's why. Meanwhile, Fern's team catches a still early, but Ubel reminds them that this means they must now fight off others who will steal their bird. Then, as if on cue, they're soon attacked by Werble's trio. At the same time, Lawine freezes the central lake to lure the birds away, shocking all teams nearby. Denkin, watching from afar, deduces Frieren's plan. She's saturating every water source with mana, so only one lake remains untouched. A perfect trap for the wary still. Back to Fern's group, Werbel's fight with Ubel intensifies. Ubel's cleaving magic shreds trees, but Werble counters with a restraining spell, Sorganale, which immobilizes targets, as long as he keeps them in sight. Ubel calls his magic the work of a man who wants to remain human despite all he's done, But before Werbel can shut her up, Ferns intervenes, saving Yubel after defeating Werbel's teammate, Air, through sheer unlimited power. Meanwhile, Frieren's plan succeeds. She conceals her mana so perfectly that a still lands on her shoulder. Good news, she succeeds in trapping it with her bird-binding spell. Hurrah! Bad news, her success exposes their location to the enemies. Denkin's group moves in. Loffen, Denkin's swift apprentice, steals the captured bird using a teleport-like spell called Jilwar, which Frieren identifies as Southern folk magic. Frieren and Denkin meet face to face. Denkin, recognizing her as the legendary elf from Himmel's era, admits respect, but attacks her anyway. Bro probably has a death wish or something. Denkin's tornadoes and firestorms barely scratch Frieren, and our girl boss calmly counters with precise spells. Exhausted, Denkin surrenders, confessing that he sought first-class status only to visit his home beyond the demon-infested northern plateau to visit a grave. While Frieren reclaims her still, Richter, Denkin's ally, fights Kane and Lawine on a raised mesa. He overpowers them with crushing earth magic. That is, until Frieren destroys the massive magic barrier enclosing the exam site, letting real rain pour in. Using the water, Kane unleashes Reem Stroha, a colossal sphere of water that washes Richter away like the itsy-bitsy spider that he is. As the rain falls across the battlefield, even the protectors watching from afar went, "Damn girl, I wasn't familiar with your game." Genau is stunned that someone shattered a barrier crafted by the great mage Seri herself, the immortal founder of the association. In her ancient hall, Seri smiles, sensing Frieren's presence for the first time in a millennium. With sunset approaching, the surviving parties rest. Denkin's group limps away in defeat. Fern's trio shelters in a cave, joking about magic that sees through clothes. Wervel's group, battered but alive, captures a still by chance. When the dust settles, Genau announces the results. 6 teams, 18 mages survive the first test. The rest are presumed disqualified or monster food. The second stage will begin in 3 days. On the other hand, back in Oberst, Stark spends the night drinking alone, relishing the rare peace of not being scolded by Fern, though the bartender gently notes he probably missed her already. You think this was fun? Wait till you hear how they almost died in the second stage. Before they jump into the abyss again, the 18 exam passers got 3 days off, which they spend on more shenanigans. Stark spends his freedom sleeping and drinking juice at night like a little kid on summer vacation. When Frieren and Fern return, Fern finds out, gets mad, and beats him like a battered husband. To fix the mood, Frieren suggests they eat at a restaurant she once visited with the hero party. At that restaurant, we see a really quiet but heavy moment. In the past, Chef Lecker promised Frieren that his food's taste would never change, even after a century. When she eats there now, she realizes the taste did change, but it became better. She no longer feels the need to chase perfect taste. She can just enjoy what is in front of her. Meanwhile, Denkin, Loffen, and Richter also end up in the same restaurant because it is where Denkin once ate with his late wife. They notice Frieren's group but silently decide not to disturb them. Everyone is there for their own memories. Yubel and Land get a mini character arc too. Yubel reveals that she can copy a person's magic if she can empathize with them, since magic reflects personality. She tests Land with Sorganale, figures out he is the type who does not want others to die because of him, and decides he is interesting enough to keep following. Back in the city, Kane and Lawine have their usual Three Stooges routine. Lawine gets forced into a cute dress by her family, and Kane teases her. Lawine sits on her back and pulls her pigtails, the usual. Stark gets dragged away by Werbel to help hunt a monster. Kane brings Frieren sweets to thank her for the first exam, which reminds Frieren of Himmel's habit of helping people so he would be remembered. Watching Kane, Lawine, and Fern laughing over snacks, Frieren quietly smiles. Then Hogwarts letters arrive. Sense gathers the 18 remaining examinees at the entrance to an ancient dungeon, the ruins of the king's tomb. The assignment is simple, in theory. Reach the bottom of the dungeon and you pass. Simple, right? Sense will accompany them but will not help, and each mage receives a small escape golem in a bottle. Break it if you want to live, but you fail the exam. And in typical horror movie fashion, they all split up. Going full Scooby-Doo, I see. Ton goes solo. Edel, Dunst, and Blay group together. Wirble's party sticks as three. Frieren and Fern go as a duo, with Sense walking quietly behind. Kane and Lewine go together. Denkin waits outside with his group and complains that everyone else is bad at teamwork. Inside the dungeon, Frieren's knowledge of labyrinths and chest mimics shines. Himmel used to insist the hero party map every corner instead of rushing into the boss room. Because of that, she reads dungeon structures like traps, like I read Ekotar. She falls for a mimic, again though, so I personally wouldn't trust her that much. Elsewhere, other groups are not so lucky. Denkin's party runs into animated gargoyles and a death trap. Lange nearly dies and has to use her escape golem. As everyone goes deeper, they begin encountering something worse than monsters, perfect clones of themselves. Genau, like a Super Bowl commentator, explains from outside what they are facing. Apparently, an ancient monster in the dungeon called the Spiegel reads memories and creates physical copies that match your mana, abilities, and fighting style. It is stronger than the modern Einzum, which is why no one has ever cleared these ruins. Inside, Wirble's team is ambushed by their own clones. Denkin's crew defeats a clone of Loffen and realizes it is a near-perfect magical replica. Ubel and Land end up trapped by Ubel's clone, with Land badly injured. Ubel chooses to gamble, charging straight into a mirror battle with her own replica. The two fight in a perfectly synchronized exchange of slashes and Sorganale. Ubel loses the first move, gets bound, and still wins by trusting Land to act. He appears behind the clone, forcing it to run. That instant is enough for Ubel to cut it down. In another wing of the ruins, Edel faces Sense's clone and realizes it cannot be hypnotized. It has no mind, just a perfect imitation of one. She escapes using the golem, heavily injured and completely outmatched. At the time, Frieren, Fern, and Sense find a hidden passage in a mural chamber detailing an old king's achievements. Progress has been suspiciously smooth so far, and all paths eventually converge at one point. A chamber door, blocking the route to the deepest treasury, and behind that door is Frieren's clone. Denkin, Richter, Loffen, Methode, Khan, and Lewine realize they're screwed and regroup in front of the door. Everyone knows this situation is bad. Not only do they have to defeat Frieren's clone to break the powerful seal on the treasury, but clones of other examinees are roaming the dungeon. Dunst staggers in and confirms the following: that the clones have no real minds. They just imitate mental behavior. Oh, and that Sense's clone is slaughtering people. What fun. Then Lewine and Khan arrive with critical info from the advanced party her brother was in. The Spiegel is apparently a fragile creature hiding in the treasury. It's weaker than Jake Paul once you reach it, but it's protected by the trifecta of Frieren's clone, the seal, and the other clones. They need a weakness, and Fern quietly raises her hand and says there might be one. She asks Frieren to stand near a wall, then fires a spell at her. Frieren defends easily, but the veteran mages present notice something tiny. For a split second when Frieren casts, her mana detection cuts out. She admits it's an old, embarrassing habit. In almost any real fight, there is no one fast enough or skilled enough to exploit it. But against an identical copy of Frieren, that tiny flaw will be mirrored. Ladies and gentlemen, the opening we're looking for. Frieren is embarrassed that Fern exposed it. Fern is irritated that Frieren hid it in the first place, and everyone else is busy praying this will hopefully work. The group decides on a plan. Step 1. The others will keep the clones distracted across the dungeon. Step 2. Frieren and Fern will enter the boss hall alone. Step 3. They will fight Frieren's clone in a drawn-out magic duel until Fern finds an opening to use Zoltrak. Step 4. Profit? Inside the circular hall, Frieren and her clone are completely matched, tearing up the arena like a Super Saiyan brawl. The clone is cautious of Fern, but too busy dealing with Frieren to track her properly. But why is Fern the key to defeating Frieren 2.0? Well, Zoltrak is a relatively new spell for elves. Frieren does not have an instinct against it, the kind of hard-coded reflexes that give her speed. Fern, on the other hand, grew up with Zoltrak as her basic, everyday spell. It is engraved into her body, so her casting speed and precision with it pose a real threat, even to a 1,000-year-old elf mage like Frieren. In the heat of battle, Frieren deliberately takes a hit, letting a dark Zoltrak break some of her defense and injure her shoulder. The clone closes in to finish her at close range. That is the opening both of them were waiting for. Frieren slides to the right, revealing Fern behind her, who unleashes a barrage of Zoltrak. She destroys the clone's arms and prepares for a final shot. Then the clone activates its trap card and uses a spell with no visible mana at all. Fern is launched into the wall, her staff broken. She recognizes it as something that sits at the height of magic, a refined technique that even she cannot fully track. Good news though, it leaves the clone as open as Rengoku's chest. Frieren finishes it with overwhelming force. With the clone dead, the seal breaks. Frieren and Fern walk into the treasury, find the Smeagol, and casually destroy it. All clones in the dungeon vanish. Mission passed. Respect plus. Sense leads the surviving examinees into the chamber, congratulates them for conquering a dungeon that no one in history could clear, and announces they have passed the second exam. When Denkin asks where Frieren is, Sense turns around. Frieren has somehow gotten herself stuck inside another mimic. Again. After clearing the ruins of the king's tomb, the exam moves from brutal dungeon boss to a quiet yet emotional wrap-up. Fern is still upset that her staff was destroyed in the battle against Frieren's clone. The staff was a gift from Hater, so she refused to replace it. Frieren, being Frieren, casually says, just buy a new one. Fern reacts with a surprised Pikachu face and gets offended like an HOA Karen on a warpath. Stark tries to smooth things over, saying Frieren probably did not mean it the way it sounded. At the same time, Lawine is sulking to Kane about failing the second stage, and Kane comforts her like a loyal golden retriever. They spot Frieren walking past carrying a bag of Fern's broken staff pieces. Turns out Frieren actually cared. She brings the fragments to Richter, who is grumpy, embarrassed about failing the exam, and running his magic shop as usual because bills do not care about your feelings. He snaps upon hearing her request, saying his store is not for trash disposal. Frieren shrugs and says if he cannot fix it, they will just find someone who can. Which hits his pride, so he takes the job. So he starts repairing the staff with a precision that only someone with ADHD can have with puzzles. As he works, Richter realizes the staff was carefully maintained and deeply loved. He apologizes to Frieren for calling it trash and finishes the repair in time. Later, Stark is dragging Fern through food stalls to help her eat away her anger. On the way back, they pass Richter closing shop, and he casually tells Fern to take good care of her staff. She connects the dots, runs back to the inn, and finds her staff fully repaired, laid on her bed while Frieren sleeps like nothing happened. For the final stage, the remaining examinees gather at the Continental Magic Association, and they are then informed that the last test is a job interview with the great mage Sari herself. Meanwhile, behind the scenes, the first-class mages are all in a hall with Sari herself. She is annoyed. 12 people reaching stage 3 is too many. In her eyes, Frieren's presence let a bunch of weak-ass nobodies survive the earlier exams. Normally, though, a third stage test would kill off anyone who is not truly first class. But since she's a merciful queen who wants to avoid needless deaths, she decides to personally conduct a more peaceful selection instead. Lernan, the usual third stage examiner, and the first ever first-class mage, admits he is not qualified to test Frieren. He saw through her mana suppression just once and realized her true mana is on Sari's level. Sari explains that Frieren spent centuries perfecting suppression to fool demons, something so impractical that only she bothered to do it. She notes that only the Demon King had ever seen through it before Lernan. Then Sari goes to crush everyone's souls in the interview. It's simple, really. Walk into Ceri's garden, stand in front of this tiny ancient elf, and let her intuition judge your entire career. Kane goes first. Ceri fails her instantly. Kane is too frightened by Ceri's mana, and Ceri cannot picture her as a first-class mage. The same happens to Dunst, Loffen, Sharf, and Air. Frieren enters and gets a different kind of rejection. Ceri tells her she also cannot see herself becoming a first-class mage, because Ceri would never approve of her as she is now. When Ceri asks for Frieren's favorite spell, Frieren answers, the spell to create a field of flowers, no doubt referencing Himmel. Ceri recognizes it as Flamme's spell, calls it trash, and dumps Frieren like an ex-girlfriend. Frieren's chill about it though. She reminds Ceri that defeating the Demon King was only possible because of her party, not just her individual power. Then she explains that this useless flower spell is likely the reason she met Himmel at all. Called it because here's a plot twist and a half that most people wouldn't have expected. Himmel and Frieren have already met before, back when he got lost in the forest as a child. She wordlessly pointed him home, then on a whim showed him a field of flowers. That memory is why he later chose her as the party's mage. I was not expecting that. Frieren also calmly predicts that Ceri will want to fail Fern, but will not be able to. The era of humans has already begun, and Fern will surpass Ceri's expectations. Then comes Fern's turn. At first, Ceri thinks Fern is just like the others, trembling at her mana. But Fern suddenly notices the instability and fluctuation in Ceri's mana, and points it out. Ceri is ecstatic to say the least. She offers to take Fern as her apprentice and raise her to heights no one has reached. But Fern refuses, remaining loyal to her master and BFF. Ceri hints that Fern's answer might affect the result, but Fern remembers Frieren's advice. You do not have to accept anything. Ceri will fail me and pass you anyway, because her intuition is always right. So Fern gives a firm no thank you. Ceri, satisfied, passes her. After that, Denkin passes because he at least entertained the idea of fighting Ceri, even if only for a second. Yubel passes on sight, without saying a word. Ceri does not even bother with questions. Lan gets exposed as a remote control clone under whose real body never left his village. Ceri finds his audacity funny and passes him. Werbel passes for his cold, realistic view of magic as a killing tool and his refusal to fight unwinnable battles. Methode passes for saying what is actually on her mind, that Ceri looks small and cute. Ceri later apologizes to Sens for being harsh about her exam, admitting she is pleased. There are many promising first-class mages this year, and so the third round of the first-class mage exam ends, and the mages drift back into ordinary life. Denkin keeps running into Fern and Stark, and ends up treating them and Loffen to pastries. Bro reveals his backstory. His late wife was a sickly noble from the northern plateau, and he spent his youth desperately chasing power and influence just to save her. She died before the Continental Magic Association and its One Wish privilege existed. Now he finally has the status he once longed for, but the person he wanted to save is gone. For him, magic has always been a tool for conflict, until this exam reminded him it can be fun again. He asks Fern to tell Frieren that, then decides to say it to her himself one day. Werbel also seeks Frieren out. She watches an old woman drop her fruit and does nothing. Werbel fixes it with magic and then confronts Frieren about not helping. He explains that in his village, the old people never talked about Himmel's big legendary feats. They remembered the small things. Killing nearby monsters, escorting merchants, carrying luggage. When demons later attack the village, Werbel realizes those small acts were what truly kept everyone alive. If Himmel had not been there, the village would probably not exist. That is why Werbel helps people even when it does not advance his goal of stronger magic. Those little stories guided him. Before he leaves, he tells Frieren to treasure the people she meets. Last goodbyes do not always come from death. Sometimes people just walk out of your life. Frieren remembers Himmel saying the same thing on his way. He lights short, simple farewells because he fully expected they would meet again. That night is the privilege conferment ceremony. Fern can bring companions, so she drags Frieren and Stark with her, or tries to. At the entrance, they are told Sari personally banned Frieren from all association buildings for the next 1,000 years. Because screw her, that's why. Fern is furious. Frieren just shrugs and says Sari has always been childish, and she did not really want to attend anyway. Stark stays outside to keep Frieren company while Fern goes in. Inside, Fern chooses her reward, a legendary ancient spell, to make clothes perfectly clean and spotless. Basically, the instant laundry spell. Sari is horrified, realizing Fern is turning into Frieren Jr. Outside, Frieren and Stark wait. Frieren idly thinks about how few first-class mages exist, and that Fern might one day become more famous than her. Lernan approaches them and apologizes for Sari's behavior. Then he suddenly attacks. Bro just casually requests a duel in the middle of the association grounds. But not out of malice though. Dude is just terrified of being forgotten. He is one of Sari's few surviving disciples, and once he dies, he worries there will be nothing to prove she existed through him. If he kills the legendary Frieren, history will remember him. Frieren dodges and weaves and takes only a wounded shoulder before shutting him down with Talk no Jutsu. She tells him there is no need for him to leave some dramatic mark on history because Sari already remembers him. Earlier, Sari herself thought about her students and their favorite spells, including a field of flowers spell in her garden, identical to Flamme's. She calls Flamme a failure on the surface, but admits she remembers every pupil clearly and has never once regretted taking them on. Frieren points out that both Sari and Lernan are the same type, awkward people who are bad at saying what they feel. Lernan be like, "Aight, you got me there." Fern returns and they head back. The next day, as Frieren's party prepares to leave for the next leg of their journey, Stark gets swarmed with townsfolk saying goodbye. Fern notes that Stark seems to be a natural Riz master wherever he goes. On the bridge out of the city, Fern shows off her laundry cheat code. Frieren praises it as a legendary grimoire tier spell, and Fern mentions Sari's disgusted reaction. Frieren says that serves Sari right. Kane and Lewine are waiting on the bridge to say their own goodbye, and Fern notices how Frieren always says goodbye so easily. She did the same with Sane, with Kraft, with so many people really. Frieren remembers Himmel explaining that emotional, drawn-out farewells only make it more embarrassing when you meet again. If you keep walking, your paths will cross again. That was his belief. And so continues the adventure of the red-haired Riz Master, a newly minted first-class mage with a new instant laundry spell, and the 1,000-year-old elf who is banned from the Magic Association's Twitch chat. What's next in store for our trio? Where else will this journey take them? And will Frieren ever learn to recognize chest mimics?